When I was in school, I was known as one of the good kids, you know? I was nice to my teachers, I was friends with everybody, and I did what I thought was my best. However, throughout all of my years in education, there was one thing that was consistent throughout. One thing that would always happen, and honestly, the thing that I would always dread would be the parent-teacher meeting. Because of the fact there was always one specific thing that was said about me. Amy's a great student and a pleasure to have in class. But they lack focus. They're too chatty. They never know when to stop talking, and she has a very difficult time staying on task. This haunts me even now, because I never understood why it was such a prominent thing throughout every single year in my school. Because my friends would so easily talk to her in class, but then they would still get everything done. I don't understand why I couldn't be like them. Why was the idea of sitting an exam in complete silence the same level of hell for me as something like going to the dentist and hearing that awful sound of the drill they use? Oh.
Hello, it's Editor Aimsey here, and I just want to say, remember, all of the things I talk about today is my own experience. Be kind to yourself, and also please subscribe. This video has taken me so long to make. I mean, I haven't uploaded in 2 months because I've been fixated on making sure this video is perfect. So please, okay, enjoy. Okay, bye.
ADHD, also known as attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, is something that is widely misunderstood. A lot of the time, people boil down having ADHD as just an extreme lack of focus. Or they just think it's when someone doesn't know if they're talking too loud. In recent years, ADHD has become a lot more spoken about, which has been a blessing and a curse. My journey with ADHD has been an interesting one, and every single time I watch somebody talk about their own experience and their own journey, there are always some things I relate to, then there's always some things that I just feel completely alone in. Which is why today I'm going to be talking about my entire experience with ADHD, as well as my experience with medication. Because even now in 2024, medication is so widely unspoken about. To talk about my entire journey, however, I've got to take you back to the complete start. Trust me, okay? I need to talk about everything to get to the final picture. You know how it goes. And who knows, there may be somebody at home who's never related to anything in their life to do with ADHD until today when they watch this video. And if that's you, we're in this together. When I was 15 years old, I was suffering with something really bad called depression. I have 2 siblings, one older and one younger. And we've all got something going on, but out of the 3 of us, my mum knew it was gonna be me that got the depression gene. Listen, what can I say? I am my mother's child. What was interesting about this, however, was after consulting a doctor, about what I could do to help young 15-year-old me battle this depression, I was advised to go on a beautiful trip to the lovely place we like to call CAMS. Now, if you're from the UK, you've probably already let out a sigh when I've said that word. For those who are not from the UK, let me catch you up to speed. CAMS, also known as the Child Adolescent Mental Health Service. Basically the place where children go to get diagnosed as well as go through everything that's happening inside their brain. It's a really interesting experience because young me didn't even know I was battling with depression. And then I was expected to tell a stranger the entire extensive history of me and my family. I was 15 years old, crying in front of a stranger as they tried to get me to speak about the poor relationship I have with some of my family members. It wasn't fun. After a long and extensive conversation about depression and anxiety, ADHD, and ASD. At the time, I was focused more on wanting to try and get rid of whatever this depression side of me was. Because obviously that was what was stressing me out the most. I mean, I was literally not leaving my room for days on end. I wasn't eating. It was hard. So on that day, I completely shoved the idea of having ADHD under the rug. And then I just moseyed on down the Rainbow Road to try and cure my depression, which did not last long. Because after 4 awful sessions with a therapist that definitely didn't get paid enough to be there, I was just thrown on medication and then told to go about my day. And that was it. That was the end of my experience with CAMS. And now you may be thinking, Aimsey, why is this important? I thought we were talking about ADHD. Aha, viewer, let me explain. That part I said about throwing ADHD under the rug because I didn't really want to focus on that right now. I had a job to do. I didn't have time to focus on that. Because, well, at the time, I was suffering with all of these sad things and I was going through an awful time. And I cared more about fixing why I was so unhappy rather than what was the hyperactive parts. Right? This is where the misunderstanding of ADHD comes in. Let me talk you through it. If I could go back in time, Life is Strange style, and I could change one thing about the past, it would to look that psychiatrist in the eyes and say, "Hey you, let's deal with my ADHD. This seems like a very important thing to deal with, and it's probably linked why I feel so awful all the time." Because what they don't tell you in school, or, I mean, anywhere these days, is that ADHD isn't just something that affects your focus and such. ADHD is so much more. I am 22 years old, and only this year have I started to feel less guilty about the unspoken symptoms of ADHD. Because the ugly parts are the ones that don't actually get spoken about enough, which means they just go completely under the radar. This is why I want to talk about it, because there could be people at home that may think they don't have ADHD, but then they'll hear this and they'll think twice. Did you know that ADHD can literally show up as depression, and a lot of people go misdiagnosed, especially if they get diagnosed later in life? There is such an obvious link when it comes to children in school or young adults feeling so guilty in themselves for not being able to complete the most mundane tasks. Whether it be chores, whether it be schoolwork, or even just remembering to check up on your friends. It leads to feeling hopeless and terrible and depressed. For me, the idea of sitting down and doing a simple task was literally the end of the world. If you had a weapon to my head and you told me I had to clean the dishes or I had to say goodbye, tell my family I love them, and also tell them there's gonna be no clean plates at my funeral because I'm not doing it. The idea of me trying to complete a task that I'm completely capable of, but maybe not ready for, was mind-numbing to me. And this is where executive dysfunction comes in. Executive dysfunction is one of my main symptoms with my ADHD. Because someone with ADHD will have a greater difficulty with organizing or remembering simple instructions despite wanting to get something done, like washing the dishes or planning a birthday or even writing a script that they've been working on for months. Yeah, that hit a bit close to home. They just lack the ability to, no matter how hard they want to. And that's where the guilt seeps in. Because nobody tells you how difficult it is for you to just sit there and realize you have forgotten to pick up the same coffee cup that has been sitting in your room for 3 weeks. And it's rotting and it's disgusting, but there is just something in your brain that physically won't let you pick it up and take it out. It's not because you don't want to. It's not because you don't want to be clean. You just lack the ability to. Explaining to someone that you have ADHD is one thing, but actually experiencing these symptoms is another. Which is why I want to circle back to my original point about school, because this is something that is very important, but I don't see a lot of people speak about it. Did you know that ADHD symptoms in girls go completely under the radar compared to their male peers? This is because the stereotypes of ADHD that is linked with young children is usually curated to boys, which is unfortunately why a lot of people that are also experiencing the same symptoms, but maybe not to the same degree, go completely under the radar. Maybe they were the perfect student, they did all of their work, they weren't chatty, they did everything they could. And then you look at it a bit closer, and you think about the fact that there's a lot of young girls who quite literally fixate on schoolwork. The idea of failing a class or failing a paper is the end of the world to them. But because they're not loud, because they're not chatty, and because they focus, it must mean they don't. There's also a huge thing that follows this, and that is the guilt that comes with it. Because a lot of young adults will then get diagnosed later in life, and there is so much grief because it wasn't ever you. You had ADHD this entire time, but the inability to finish tasks or even just simple things that you thought was your own fault, it was never you. It was just you were never showing signs enough for people to pick up on it. And now you've got to deal with the fact that throughout all of these years, there was always a greater force that was stopping you from achieving your best. It's really important to talk about this side of ADHD, especially when it comes to people in school. Because I used to beat myself up constantly about how awful I did in exams. I mean, I'm someone who had to sit in my own room for exams because the idea of sitting in a big hall that is in complete silence and the only sound is a clock ticking, I couldn't do it. However, the problem is, even when I was in my own room, I still did terrible on exams. One thing that I always go back to when I think about my experience with ADHD and school is the nickname that my teachers gave me. I'm not talking about my friends, I'm not talking about my peers. My literal teachers had a nickname for me. The ironic thing, before I even tell you the nickname that I was given, is I wasn't even thought about having ADHD until I was 15. But from the age of 8, I was nicknamed Rocket. By my teachers, by my friends, because of how fast I spoke, how quickly I would move around class, how awful I was at staying in one place, and the fact that I was never focused on anything and I would always jump in conversation. I think at least one of those adults that nicknamed me Rocket would at least have a slight idea that maybe, just maybe, I had ADHD. But sadly, compared to my male peers, I wasn't considered as bad, and so it didn't matter to them. I met a lot of people who think they have ADHD, and the one thing they always tell me is they think they don't struggle enough to be considered. So explaining that they're too afraid because they don't show the real symptoms and stuff like that. This is something that I think stems all the way from school, because of the fact that we are literally competing against each other in every single class. So the idea of not being enough, it is important back then, and so it follows you through later in life. Having ADHD is different for everybody, as there are different types of ADHD. There is inattentive ADHD, impulsive ADHD, and combined ADHD. I have combined, and funnily enough, when I was actually getting my official diagnosis because I was onboarding to get on medication, I was told that I was the most obvious case that they have seen in years, and they were honestly surprised that I wasn't already put on medication. If only the little voice in my brain would have let me start the process years ago, maybe everything would have been fine. But anyway, with ADHD, overlap with other things that people can struggle with is astronomical. And there's also overlaps that you, at home, may not even be aware of. A lot of the time, people get diagnosed with 3 to 4 to 5 different things before they even consider the possibility of having ADHD. And most of the time, people then realize it was ADHD all along. The main thing for me and my ADHD, especially in my adult life, has been this. My short attention span has been one of my main problems. I can't even get myself to stay focused on something that I am extremely interested in. The way I describe it to people is in my brain, it's like a little office. And there's just one little guy there with a bunch of controls, and he's just slamming his hand on the no button. Like, I'm trying to do something that I'm really focused in on, and he's up there, and he's just slamming, he's going to town. Another one of my traits that I really do struggle with is my impulsivity, which is also awful when you have a symptom that also just doesn't let you allow change. It really isn't easy when you have a brain that is completely battling you against everything you want to do. Or maybe you think you want to do, because is it just my impulsivity, or is it something I actually want to do? And a prime example of this is something I'm not proud of, but I really wanted to visit this other country. And so at 3 in the morning, I booked an entire trip. And then when I woke up, I completely cancelled it. The reason I cancelled it is because I hate traveling. I hate airports. I hate going to other countries. It is one of my biggest triggers. For someone with ADHD, I also have a lot of sensory issues. I have a lot of physical needs, and traveling ruins all of them. And I don't even know what I was thinking, because sometimes I am so stuck in my skin that I feel like the only thing I can do is run away. And then I realize I just needed sleep. I don't need to do these impulsive things. They're just not needed. I asked for questions before recording this video, and one of the main questions I got is whether or not ADHD paralysis is a real thing. Now, before answering this, I want you guys to remember that dealing with ADHD is completely unique for everybody. But I'm answering this for myself, and I will say, yes, 100%. I deal with it so severely. I'm my own boss. I have my own office. I do everything myself. I manage myself. But being your own boss is also a terrible thing, because what happens when your only employee is unable to finish the task that was set to them 3 months ago because they're so unbelievably scared and frozen about the idea of everything going wrong, about them losing the house, about the fact that they can't even finish the task that was set for them 3 months ago because they're just in fear that everything is gonna go away. There are times where I have to emotionally strap myself to my own chair and drink a crazy amounts of caffeine until I am literally shaking just to finish a stream or a YouTube video or even just an idea. Because it's not that I don't want to do these things. I do. More than anything. I love this job and I love being able to do this. It is one of my favorite things and it's what I excel in. But I just can't. I have to force myself to. I have tried to explain what ADHD paralysis is to people before, and I never really feel that I get it right. So I am just gonna demonstrate. Yeah. No, it's not fun. And you may be thinking to yourself, well, Amy, how did you get over all of this? I mean, you must be struggling badly if you have all these symptoms, but you still managed to get all this stuff done. You know? Surely it can't be that bad. Mute, shush. Be patient, because we're getting into that next. Medication! Medication when it comes to mental health has become sort of a taboo topic in recent years, where some people like to believe that it's somewhat controversial to even discuss it, all because of the stigma against it, and to that I say, screw it. Personally, I wouldn't go to an optician's and tell everybody who's trying to get glasses that they're stupid for needing them. Because at the end of the day, why don't you just live the way you were born? Who cares? So you're a little blind, it's fine. Maybe just go outside, drink some tea. You'll feel fine. I wouldn't tell someone who needs glasses that they're weak for needing them. So why do people think people who take medication is weak for taking medication? I mean, I've been on medication since I was 15 years old. And I am unbelievably glad I did, because if it wasn't for medication, I would still be falling in that hole that I was falling in for so long. And I just wouldn't be here if I never got out of that. Anyway, now that's out of the way, let's talk about the pros and cons that come with ADHD medication. Because like all medication, it is not an exact science. Sometimes you'll go through such an extensive journey just to find the right medication. You'll switch through a bunch of them, you'll find pros and cons, and then you'll realize the first one you tried was the best one to begin with. Maybe you just needed a higher dosage, maybe you needed a lower one, maybe you needed a different type, you know? The medication journey isn't easy, but nothing in life is. It's weird because it's not due to any of the side effects or even the process, but It's because of how long the actual journey may take. I know this is something that deters so many people who want to start medication, which is ironic because it's not the symptoms of the medication that actually deters people, but the actual journey and the onboarding of getting on it. Especially in the UK, where the waiting list for some medication and even just getting a diagnosis can go up to around 3 years at the moment. However, this is where I want to ease the brains of the people that are probably thinking this exact thing right now. It's worth it. It is completely worth it. It is worth it. This entire journey has been a pain in my ass. I mean, it's been long, it's been extensive. It's been mind-numbing at times. Well, I'll be honest with you, I still haven't found the right medication that completely suits everything I need. Because as I'm recording this right now, I'm literally in the process of changing medication for the second time. You know, what if it doesn't do anything? What if I'm the same? What if getting a diagnosis doesn't change anything? What if I've just been lying to everyone around me? I don't even have ADHD. What if? Being on medication is the best thing that has ever happened to me. My quality of life has changed, and I have actually been able to work to a standard that I am so proud of, because just look at my upload schedule. I never uploaded before this year because of the fact that I just couldn't sit myself down to work on anything. And now I'm uploading almost weekly. And also the change is not just related to work, because my closest friends have been able to notice. Because before I was on medication, my friends literally had an ongoing joke that they'd be lucky to get a reply from me within the first month. You know, they did the whole thing where they would text me and it was as if I would throw my phone over the ocean. But I was able to remember to reply to my friends and do normal things in my life so much more clearly. The way I like to describe it to people, it's as if the TV static in my brain was just dialed down and I could see through it. And honestly, I can't remember life before I started taking medication now. And I don't think I could ever go back. It is scary, don't get me wrong. I mean, being on medication is a huge change and it's a huge commitment. But you have to remember, at the end of the day, it isn't just something you're doing to help your brain, but it's something you're doing to help you. Because you deserve that. Don't let your fear overrule you here, because you deserve to live a life that you are unbelievably proud of. A big thing I've been told by people who want to start the process of getting medication or even just getting diagnosed for ADHD is that they are terrified that they're just faking it. That all these symptoms they have are just something that they're making up. Honestly, are you really faking it if you are experiencing these symptoms even when you're by yourself? Because who are you faking it to? Don't let your brain convince you that you deserve anything other than kindness when it comes to stuff like this. Because do yourself a favor and give yourself time and figure out the best way to move on and to move forward with something like this. Once again, I'm not saying it's easy, because it would be extremely futile to sit here and tell you it's an easy process and you can get it done tomorrow. Because depending on where you are in the world, it could be expensive, or maybe there just isn't room for you to even figure this out right now. But it is unbelievably worth it. And if you can find someone to talk about this with, please do it. If you're watching this video and anything I've said relates to you, maybe think about it. Talk with people who have ADHD, discuss your symptoms in the comments, even make a few calls and see what is said. Don't let the fear of this journey being a long one stop you from doing what is easier for you, because the time is going to pass anyway, so you may as well do it now. It took me years to start living a life that I am finally proud of. Just don't do the same.